إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم تسليما كثيرا وبعد. All praise due to Allah and His praise and blessings and peace be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and his followers until the day of judgment. I bear witness that Allah is the only one worthy of worship, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, His last and final messenger. My dear brothers and sisters, I would like to speak to you about something that we all involve in. We all do. But some of us more than others, more often than others. Some of us do it for various reasons. Some of these things major with others, minor with others, which is mistakes. ليس من الغريب أن نتحدث عن الأخطاء. It's not something uncommon that we talk about mistakes. Because if we talk about mistakes, we will find a huge amount of mistakes in front of us. We see it in ourselves and others, in people around us, in organizations, in the countries, the society, on the nation at large. When we talk about human beings, we think of mistakes because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that part of the nature of human beings, that human beings do mistakes. Inna bani Adam khata'. Kullu bani Adam khata'. All human beings make mistakes, and the best among them those who repent from their mistakes. I'm talking about mistakes which is intentionally done and categorized as something sin or wrong. Okay, if you add to this the mistakes that's done unintentionally, which is by accident, the word mistake could refer to something you did it intentionally and you know it's wrong, or something you did it unintentionally. الخطأ بمعنى الإثم والمحرم أو الخطأ بمعنى العمل غير المقصود. We will find in front of us, as I said, a huge amount of things and points to talk about. But I would like to pick something very specific about this topic today. Since we all have mistakes, since we all see mistakes, so we all deal with mistakes, so regardless if it's our mistakes or other people's mistakes, like your children, your spouse, your employees, your friends, your community, your country, and so forth. I found that there is a lot of mistakes we do when we deal with our mistakes. So it's like mistakes time two. وجدت أن هناك كمية كبيرة من الأخطاء نفعلها حينما نتعامل مع أخطائنا. I found out that we do a lot of mistakes when we deal with our mistakes. And I want to share a few of them with you. But before I start, I want to say that it's not enough that you have a good intention. So for example, when you deal with somebody's mistakes in the wrong way, it's not enough to say, you know what, I want to make sure that my son raised in the best way. You know, my intention was correct when I did this to my spouse, or when I talked to my friends, or when I talked to my community. No, good intention is good, but it's not good enough. We have also to add to it a good, correct methods on the way that we deal with our mistakes. And the first thing that I would like to start with, that I found so many times, that we try to ignore our mistakes or other people's mistakes. And we kind of put our head in the sand and we think that these mistakes will go away by themselves. And many mistakes, some few will go away by themselves, but so many of them will not go away by themselves. Sometimes we don't want just to face our mistakes. We keep delaying it, and we don't want to deal with it. And that's make the mistakes bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think one of the first mistakes that we do, that we try to avoid facing our mistakes, and talk to ourselves about the wrong things that we do, to admit our weakness, to admit our mistakes to ourselves, or even to point it out and to speak out about it to others. We try to run away from carrying the responsibility of these mistakes that we make and this sin that we commit. There is some people who will refuse completely to receive any form of criticism or corrections or nasiha. So this organization or this group or this scholar or this father will not be willing to listen to anything that point out some of his or her mistake. It's like this person who, a guy was saying, I married a woman and basically her last name was right, but I didn't know that her first name was always. So, and you can say this about men and women. This kind of attitude that you're always right, it's not correct. It's not helpful. And so many times you just see things wrong happen in your home, in your house, and you don't talk about it at all. You never talk about it. And that's just trying to avoid it and not to talk about it is not going to solve the problem. I think it is the right for the Muslim upon each other is to give nasiha. So if I see someone doing wrong and I never speak about it, I never tell the person and I just ignore it because it's whatever justification for that, that's not correct. That's not how Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam envisioned this society to be and how we deal with one another. رأيت أيضا أن من الأخطاء علاج الخطأ بشكل ردة فعل أو بتعبير آخر الخطأ علاجه بخطأ آخر. I found out that sometimes we correct mistakes by another mistakes. So it became double mistakes. I always say, you know what? One mistake plus one mistake will never make one correct. And so many times we don't, we forget this simple formula. No matter how bad you are in math, that's so easy to remember. One mistake plus one mistake will always equal what? Two mistakes. It will never bring one correct. Sometimes we have reaction more than trying to fix the mistake. We just react to our mistakes. And in that process, especially if you get too excited, what happened? You make more mistakes and you complicate things. I warn you that when you see a mistake in yourself and other people, that you can just react immediately to it without thinking, without analyzing, without thinking about the proper time and place and way of dealing with this mistake. For instance, somebody felt, the Shaykh today talked about, for example, night prayers. And I got reacted to this, so excited, and I go and I spend like hours and hours making night prayers, then I miss Salat al-Fajr. So what's the point from that? Or for example, somebody sees something wrong, his daughter not wearing the most appropriate hijab, or she doesn't wear hijab. Then he puts so much pressure and get too excited and too aggressive. Then she said, you know what? I don't want this religion at all. Sometimes we break people instead of correcting them. Remember when the man, and that's by the way applied to yourself. Sometimes the mistake you see yourself, so you react, you don't plan, you don't take it graduate. Or you see it in others, and you remember the story of the man who came and urinated in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and how the Nabi ﷺ stopped the companions from attacking him while he's doing that, because it's going to create more problems. And in Nabi ﷺ, قال لا تزرموه, leave him until he finished, then advise him. Then the Nabi ﷺ explained to him that this cannot happen inside the masjid. Because, by the way, the masjid in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, because some of you might say, how come a man will do that? The masjid in the time of the Prophet ﷺ is what? Has a front, okay, and quarter, maybe 25% of it has a kind of roof or a ceiling, okay? Then the rest are open, and on the side there is no wall. Just for you to understand, it's like an open place, so people line up. Then later on, they start extending these walls. So sometimes, so the man thought this is just an empty corner, he can go, relieve himself. And that was just ignorant. It is important for us not to correct mistake with another mistake. Look, for example, And this is very interesting because sometimes this is take a shape of a methodology. يكون الخطأ حتى منهجي. It's not just a mistake of an individual. Sometimes a mistake of a group, of an ideology that people develop, that they see a mistake in the ummah that they want to correct it, so they correct it with another mistake. And if that mistake that they use, or that methodology that they use, can create more problem. I give you an example. You see injustice happen in the world. So what will be the way to correct that is by, going towards violence and killing and hurting people. That's, yes, I see a mistake happening, injustice happening in certain part of the world. So what I do to correct the injustice by another injustice. That's wrong. When you look at, for example, in history of Islam, some people see that the Muslim community not involved in politics, or the Muslim world politically not involved. They're not involved enough. So what they do, they get so excited and they get overzealous about this, and they said, you know what, everything should be put on hold and everybody should just focus on one thing, which is, being involved in politics, and push everything toward that. Another people see the Muslim Ummah are ignorant, so that you want everybody just to read books and not to focus on any other area in Islam. Some people looked at the debate between the fuqaha and the theologians. And that's a very common mistake we see today. That there is a group of Muslims, look at the Muslim Ummah, and they found that the Muslim Ummah, the fuqaha, debate with each other, different of opinions and whatever. Then they looked at the theology and aqeedah, and they say, this is bid'ah, this is sunnah. They said, you know what? خلونا من كل هالفقه والعقيدة. They let fiqh and aqeedah out of the practices, as they said. خلى خارج الأقواس. They said, you know what? We don't want to deal with this. We don't want to deal with fiqh. We don't want to deal with aqeedah. What we deal with just fada'il al-a'mal. The deed of righteousness, and just talk about spirituality, and be so passive. Who cares about what governments do? Who cares about injustice? Who cares about rights? Just make sure that we go out fi sabilillah, and we just, we became all brother and love one another, and that's enough. That's another reaction. It's another mistakes in dealing with the mistake. Look at some people, look at how people are so involved in dunya, so attached to this worldly life. So what was the resolution? What was the solution for them? How to fix these mistakes? They became so ascetic in a sense. They call az-zuhd fi dunya is to leave the dunya. So you know what? You're not allowed to you should not wear good clothes. You do this. They ask you to avoid the world and live isolated from the world and leave even the ilm behind you and just focus on one thing, which is some, rituals and dhikr and so thing, until we call them in our culture tusbih darawish. Just, have nothing to do with reality or with the world, or just completely devoted to in my opinion, it's an empty spirituality, a deceiving type of spirituality. We should remember that always do not fix a mistake with another mistake. Another point, number 3, sometimes I noticed that there is a resistance to correct mistakes openly. And this is a little bit, I want you to pay attention to it. It's true that there is some mistakes should be dealt with privately. 100% nobody disagree with that. But there are certain mistakes it should talk about it openly. We should stand up and raise our voice and say that's wrong. That cannot happen. Especially when it comes to a level of society and a level of community at large. Things happen openly. It should be talked about openly. Not necessarily to talk about the individual, but even in certain times, you need to speak about the individuals who misleading people or cause great harm in society or in community. And in that case, that should be spoke about it openly. And there is a plenty of narrations from the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and through history like that. When people stand up for Umar openly, corrected Umar. Or stand up and talk to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu wa arda. Or in the time of the Tabi'een, when Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu talk to, for example, Marwan, when he put Salat al-Eid after the khutbah, or when one of the khulafa raised his hand in khutbah al-Jum'ah to make dua, one of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum said, put your hand down, this is bid'ah. That's not how you we don't raise hands in the khutbah al-Jum'ah for dua, except for al-istisqa. So you see that the whole entire we inherit a big amount of books and statements and incidents where the ulama spoke openly about the leader of the mubtadi'ah, the innovators, and the people who misled the ummah at that time, talked about them openly. Sometimes we get irritated whenever we speak about problem in society openly. Like, for example, talk about drugs. And we talked 2 khutbahs ago about the issue of drugs. No, don't talk about these issues. No, it is a problem and we should speak about it openly. Like about the lack of interest to stand up for the truth. That people just too scared. People don't have the courage, don't have the zeal, don't have the interest to care for others. Or to care for the ummah. Talk about how we are in a business of losing when it comes to many projects that we do in our community. Not setting priority correct, duplicating the work. The issue of domestic violence. The issue of, for example, these certain topics people don't want to talk about. Racism. A problem that we have in our community. It's just taboo, don't touch it. Don't talk about it. But if it became, this issue has to be judged based on the maslahah. That's why leaders should take care of these issues. Because there is a maslahah, a greater benefit in going public or going in private or secret or privately. Or to how you address it in public. But the point that I want to make, that we, unfortunately, so many of us, especially those who are raised overseas, we're raised in a way that you're not allowed to speak about anything publicly. Everything hush-hush. Everything just to be not allowed to come out and to be spoken about. Why? Because we were, unfortunately, some of us raised that talking about mistakes, it's an insult. Talking about mistakes, it's basically a personal attack on me. And that's not correct. That's not right. Another problem that I see when it comes to mistakes, sometimes we are very ideal. We expect people to be ideal. For example, your son making a mistake. And I'm expecting my son to be a perfect son. He or she is only 5 years old, 10 years old. They are teenager. You can't expect them to be perfect. I know a son came to me in this masjid with tears in his eyes. He said, Shaykh, I attended my Hifd al-Quran's graduation party. He memorized the whole Quran. It's not only that my father did not show up in that party. I came a little bit late, it was 11:30. He said, the amount of abuse that I got that night, and humiliation and names and things, unbelievable. And I wish that the father of that man is with us today to hear me saying this. But what do you expect? Him to be perfect? It's somebody so excited, so happy. No, he has to be perfect. And you know what? Because your son or your daughter is A students or religious a little bit, you expect him to be always perfect. Just because he's a sheikh, he cannot make a mistake. He cannot lose temper. Just because he's a famous person, he cannot make something wrong. No. Just because, and that's, you expect your wife to be just perfect and your husband to be perfect. That's just wrong. We cannot, when we see people doing mistakes, we should not, we talk about it, but we should not expect them to be perfect. Because if we do that, it's not going to end how many mistakes we're going to find out. Also, I found on the other side, there is a lot of people not exaggerating the exaggerate the excuses. So sometimes I found it one of the problem with dealing with mistakes that we immediately find million excuse for ourselves. All the time. It doesn't matter, your mistake big or small, I always have an excuse for it. And you know what? Sometimes I feel that, you know what, I'm not guilty anymore. Just why? Because I'm a human being. Like that day somebody said, I'm a human being. So what if you're a human being? At least admit your mistake. At least make sure that you make a promise, effort to correct. So a human being, it doesn't give you, oh, the Prophet said the best among you, the men who make mistakes. So let me just keep doing it. No, it's not. You know what? I'm just young and I have a desire. No, that's not an excuse. You know, my wife doesn't talk to me. My husband doesn't take care of me. So it doesn't give you the excuse to go date someone else. You know, it doesn't give you the excuse to continue doing the mistake. Sometimes we just do that. Like imagine if you break the light and the police stop you and said, sir, you just, committed a violation. Yes, officer, but I'm a human being, I make mistakes. Yeah, sure, tell that to the judge. Sometimes we say it is him or her the reason for my mistake. I think we should be balanced when it comes not to expect people to be perfect, but also not to be just finding an excuse for every mistake that we make. I found sometimes one of the mistakes we do when we deal with mistakes, that the standard we have for mistake is something very weird. Sometimes we say to anything that is you're not familiar with, wrong, mistakes, not correct. Something that's not part of your own culture or the way you're raised, that's not. That day a couple talking to me and he said to me, you know what, this is just wrong the way she deal with me. Why, Habib? He said, you know how my mother used to treat my father? But your mother is not the standard for that's not how the standard is. In my time, how we used to do this? Yeah, but your time is not the standard for others. Or sometimes the standard is the opinion of a sheikh. So if my sheikh says this, that's how the standard, I hold you to it. Or for example, my culture, or my madhab, or my group, or my, whatever the way I was raised out. That's not the standard for defining what's right and what's wrong. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يرحمنا رشدنا وأن يغفر لنا ذنبنا أقول ما أستغفر الله أقول هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وبعد. Also, we have to understand that there is certain things done. You might see it wrong, but other people see it as something correct. And that's what we call مسائل الاختلاف في الاجتهاد. When we have a different of opinions, when we have a different, views to things, and we should deal with these things that I consider it mistakes with a, a grain of salt. And in another word, you can advise, you can express your opinion, but don't attack. Don't say you're wrong, you're haram, you're fasiq, you're wrong, and you make a judgment. Sometimes just a difference of opinions. And you have to respect that. I think even among spouses, if your wife or your husband choose one opinion over another, you cannot force your opinion over her or over him. Unless this is something the house cannot function without it. In this case, you have to agree on something. But in the end of the day, like sometimes between even two masajid, two groups, two shuyukh, two individuals, if there is a difference of opinions among the issue, you are allowed to advise, but just don't attack. There is a famous da'iyah, the founder of a very famous group in our modern history, Hassan al-Banna rahimahullah. He said something. He said, we should work with each other in the area that we agree with each other upon. But we should excuse one another in the area we disagree on. كان شيخنا الألباني رحمه الله له تعليق جميل جدا على هذه الكلمة. Our شيخنا الألباني رحمه الله has a very beautiful comment on this statement. He said, this statement is incomplete and it should be completed by adding, قال نتعاون فيما اتفقنا عليه ويعذر وينصح بعضنا بعضا فيما اختلفنا فيه. When we disagree with each other, we should advise one another. We just don't say excuse one another, khalas, and you doing wrong and I don't talk about it. No, we can advise one another and we can keep the friendship. But if I see you doing something wrong, I just don't be quiet. I say, hey, this is wrong. This is against the sunnah. This is need to be corrected. This is a hadith sahih, this is a weak narration. You can't be doing that. That's an opinion, but it is not correct for 1, 2, 3. I don't force my opinion upon you, but I give you the advice. And it's up to you, you take it or not. But for the ummah to be complicit, to be just silent, not to speak out, not to give advice to one another, that's not acceptable. That's not a society that we want. We want a society to learn how to respect one another when we disagree with one another. But we have to have that room and ability and trust in one another to speak out, to give the advice in the proper way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أن يوفقنا وإياكم لكل خير وأن ينفعنا وإياكم بما سمعنا. اللهم اغفر لنا ولآبائنا وإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد. اللهم اغفر الميتين، اللهم ارحم الموتى، اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين، اللهم ارحم موتانا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر لوالدينا، اللهم اغفر لوالدينا وقرابتنا وذوي أرحامنا ومن له حق علينا. اللهم انصر المظلومين في كل مكان، اللهم انصر المظلومين في كل مكان. اغني فقراءنا يا رب وبارك في أغنيائنا يا حي يا قيوم. اهد ضالنا وارد غائبنا يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم انزل على هذا المسجد رحمتك وبركاتك وبارك في هذه الجالية يا ذا الجلال والإكرام، فيهم وفي أهليهم وفي أموالهم وأرزاقهم وعاجلتهم وآجلتهم، وارفع مكانتهم في الدنيا والآخرة يا حي يا قيوم. صل اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وقوموا للصلاة يرحمني ويرحمكم.